Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, I was talking to a friend a couple days ago, and they were debating me because they're kind of a little bit of a leftist. And they were talking about the 2A and saying that they were parroting the typical leftist talking points, that the founding fathers had no idea that the AR-15 ever could exist, that it's a weapon of war, the typical talking points. And when I countered with, if that's true, then Twitter, TV, Facebook, any of the social media stuff can't be used to spread or to query for voters or to be used by candidates for any platform at all. And he was like, well, no, they're covered under the First Amendment. And I said, yes. Don't you think that our founding fathers understood that? They knew technology would advance. In the founding of our country, during the founding of our country, they had repeating rifles. You were allowed to have weapons of war, quite literally. Up until 1928, I believe it was, you could have a machine gun mailed to your house. Quite literally, a belt-fed Maxim machine gun would be UPS dropped off to your front door. No questions asked, no backdoor, no background checks, none of that stuff. Dropped off at your house with a smile. Okay? That literally, quite literally, is a weapon of war. Instances of this particular machine gun I'm talking about are just now coming back into vogue in Ukraine right now, because anything that they can get their hands on, they're mobilizing to fight the Russians. They're remobilizing Maxim guns. So to say that they couldn't envision weapons of war or technology advancing doesn't it doesn't give enough credit to our founding fathers. Specifically, our founding fathers thought of pretty much every bad situation the country could go to, and they gave us guidance, basic guidance on what to do. Now we have discussions on what we should do, and a lot of people still don't understand that rights are rights. You can't give up one right thinking you're going to maintain the rest of them. It's these same people that are willing to sacrifice they're actually outright coming out and saying censorship is okay, so they're willing to sacrifice their First Amendment freedom of speech so that they can virtue signal, or that you can stop quote-unquote misinformation. Information is only misinformation if it's not actually vetted or looked at. Any and all information available to someone to make their decision is good information, so that they have the decision-making ability they need to have. They should be able to vet that information and see if it's correct. But this person I'm talking about, I'm not angry at them or trying to go after them in any way. They're actually a really close friend of mine. My problem is that he's extremely naive and extremely misinformed about the situations. He asks, when would our rights ever be taken away from us? And I was like, censorship happens all the time, man. What are you talking about? We had a sitting president of the United States pulled off of social media because of reasons. People didn't like what he said. That's what it boils down to. I don't know of another politician who would enter the modern public square and get banned. And then they have a lot of people clouding around him to try to unban him and other things. Today is a good day to be reminded of that type of thing, though. Liz Cheney conceded already. 20 minutes into her election, they had already officially called it, that she had lost. So one more person that probably shouldn't have been in office. With all these things going on and these intense political cultural war issues coming up in the 2A, and we're seeing, when they shut down the country for 2 years, basically, and we ended up watching more politics or getting more politically involved than we ever have because we couldn't really do anything else. Now we're very hyper political. All of us are. The problem is we have a lot of people that listen to one narrative because they like it, stick to it, and don't vet information, good or bad. They just use it as talking points and parrot these during what they deem as a debate, when in reality it's not. And that's present on both sides of the political spectrum, the left and the right. You have some that come out and were thinking that, this last election was stolen. And yet, if they could steal an election, why would they be so hard charging against Trump right now to try to make sure that they put him in jail, or try to, so that they can do what they need to do, so he can't run in 2024. Whether he does or not, that doesn't really matter. But it's these political discussions that keep entering into places they don't belong. The 2A is for everybody. It should be for everybody. And I've gotten this person that I mentioned earlier in this podcast actually wants to go shoot. Said they'd probably have fun. Well, here's the problem then. He also says that the 2A is just a hobby. And it's not just a hobby. It's one of your rights. It's one of your God-given rights. Why do you say it's just a hobby? And his answer is because just going to shoot, you're not a Delta operator. You're never going to be a cop. You're not going to do any of those things. And I keep going. I told him, what about the people in Uvalde? We've seen time and time again during the summer of love, so to speak, with all the riots and the police not being able to respond. Your safety is your own problem. And if it gets too hairy, that's exactly what happens to agents of the state. They're not going to be able to protect you. And I would much rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, time and time again. So it sucks that you can't ever get someone to get past that stale argument that our founding fathers wouldn't envision repeating rifles, wouldn't envision the AR-15. The AR-15 is not a weapon of war. The AR-15 is a series of rifles that were designed by Armalite for sport use. First off, the military eventually got interested in a weapons design similar to this called the AR-10. They downsized it to the 5.56, where you get the M16. But what makes the AR series rifles and the M16 series rifles dramatically different? Number one is chambering. Military chamberings are all 5.56. That's now very common in the private sector also. But the other thing is, military weapons either have a full auto setting or have a 3-round burst setting. Civilian ones cannot accept those parts without modification, which is illegal according to the ATF right now, because you're making it into a machine gun. Now, that still doesn't explain the tired talking points. It's the fact that they won't learn anything about the 2A. You know, if you really wanted to get dangerous, you would continue down that line of thought and tell us we cannot have but single shot muzzle loading devices, because what you will get is a lot more damage, destruction than you're thinking possible. You're going to have some idiot with a damn hand cannon, quite literally a hand cannon, loaded with grape shot that will kill everything inside of 20 meters in all directions except for the direction it came from. So that's not a good plan. In addition to what it could do for collateral damage, it just doesn't make sense. We have better weapons nowadays. Our rights are our rights, and we shouldn't have to go back in time. If we have to go back in time in the 2A world, then we're going to start handing you inkwells and quills so you can start writing your tweets. Like, share, subscribe, be great.